The hour of 7:30 is coming past us just a little bit. It is 7:36. I'd like to call to order this study session of September 3rd, 2019 of Urbana School District 116. Roll call, please.
Member Carter.
Here.
Member Exum.
Here.
Member Patton.
Here.
Member Pulaski.
Here.
Member Fisher is here. Vice President Hall.
Here.
President Demmett.
The gang's all here, so we'll start the meeting. We have quorum. Any additions, corrections, or modifications to this evening's agenda? Any from the board? Seeing none. Citizen statements. We do have one citizen statement tonight, so any citizen that wishes to address the board, we'd ask for you to fill out the goldenrod sheet and turn it into our recording secretary. And while I'm giving everyone an opportunity to do that, we'd like to thank Austin Pontius and Molly Sweeney for running the cameras for us tonight. Molly's a senior at Urbana High School. Austin, you're out of high school, I think, well out of high school. So, yeah. So with UPTV. So thank you very much for running the camera for us tonight so the folks at home can watch us. We'll go ahead and get started with citizen participation. So Scott, you're up. Just the name when you start, please.
Good evening. My name is Scott Dowds. I just wanted to speak real quick tonight on a couple different things. First, as most of you know, I'm one of the administrators for the parents group on Facebook. Currently, we're at about 830 members, so it's good to see that we're getting a little bit more participation and a little more added people every year. We do still try to act mainly as an informational source. We do also have some people who come into the group to ask questions, so we're still kind of trying to provide that. Thankfully, a lot of the issues around the district seem to have calmed down, which has made it a lot nicer. But I also did want to let the board know that I am actively attempting to put together another PTA council this year. I've spoken with members of most of the PTAs. Ronnie Turner Winston, who is actually one of the other admins for the group, is on the PTA at both the middle school and the high school. So we've already got those, and I've spoken to PTAs at most of the other grade schools as well. So we should be getting that off the ground. I have some ideas that I've wanted to put in place for a while as far as like school collaboration and things of that nature. So hopefully that's something we can make happen. But I just did want to let you know that I am actually trying to put that together. So hopefully we will have something to let you guys know about in maybe another month or two. So that's it. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Dante Lotz. And Dante, for the purpose of the tape, just give your name and then go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm Dante Lotz. This is Imani. Many of you already know I'm the social worker over at Wiley Elementary, and so this meeting was very timely for me to put a topic out there that I think is very important for us to deal with in Urbana School District. Homeless families. I know that we had changes towards the end of the year in regards to resources being available to our families due to families that were utilizing rooms that didn't leave them in the best of shape when they left. I was just informed today that we no longer have the United Way homeless grant through ROE. And so I had an issue that was presented to me on Thursday where a family said they were going to be homeless on Friday. Well, that's the day before the holiday weekend. And so I jumped through as many hoops as I could. And this particular mother was in the hospital from like Sunday through Thursday. And so when she got released, it was like, here I am homeless. This was a situation that she wasn't aware of. They were living with other family members. Those family members had to find other housing, and so therefore that left this mother and 4 children who all attend Urbana schools homeless. And so again, as I reached out to ROE, they gave me a number to a regional planning commission. You get the recordings, they send you the centralized whatever intake or whatever they call it for the emergency screenings. Some of the screenings are here in town, some are happening in Rantoul. So it's like the timeliness of this situation is that it's still an issue. I think the mother may have stayed in the hospital lobby a couple of nights. The daughter that attends our school was situated with the grandparent, but yet and still, as Tuesday come and do the following up, the resources seem not to be there. I'm a community person, so again, I try to reach out as much as possible. I even shared my journey with the social workers just so they can be aware and eliminate some of their steps in the process. But I don't know what we have. This is my second year in the district, but again, Wiley is 80% low income. So I know this is not going to be the first time I might face a situation like this, but just wanted to put this in the atmosphere so that it can be on our hearts and minds as we're dealing with it. I even reached out to Township, and I believe they may have been in discussions with Urbana as well as Champaign because it's the same issue with both districts. So I'm just hoping that collectively, Urbana better together, that this is something that we can deal with and have something easily accessible to all the social workers and all of those that are working with the families. Because again, even if I had 3 weeks notice, it's still, what's the outcome? So again, I'm looking for, not right now, but gaining understanding, hoping that I can help with that process. But I think we need something specific to Urbana families as these issues come up. And so, thank you very much.
Dante, before
It's on.
yeah, I know we typically don't respond to citizen statements, but Kim Norton is our district homeless liaison, so she'll reach out to you tomorrow. We have Barb Daly for another week, and then she's officially retiring, so we'll have Kim work with Barb to see what we can do and get some more details.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe you're the only two citizens in the room, but if there's another citizen that wishes to address the board. Grace, I almost consider you part of the team here. You've been here. That's our League of Women Voters observer, and Grace is about 15 years now, 20 years? 26 years you've been observing us, yes. So, anyone else wish to address the board? Hearing none, we'll move on. We have no call for an exec session after tonight's meeting, and so we need a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. We'd like to go into our administrative reports then, so our six-day enrollment report.
Okay, so tonight, Kim Norton, our Assistant Superintendent for Student Learning, is going to present a six-day enrollment report as of last week. As you guys know, these numbers do change daily, so, there may be some small little changes between now and when we reach that 6th day. But Kim is going to kind of give us a nice little summary.
Good evening, everyone. The numbers on the spreadsheet at your seats are effective as of August 30th. And if we begin, we can start with looking at King. And so we'll see that they're at 296, so they are up 3 from last year. And that number is also reflective of 24 that are in early childhood at King. Leal is at 409, up 14 from last year. Dr. Williams is at 431, down 30. Originally, we thought that number was going to be much higher, and then when we did drop students at 6th day, then we did see that we were lower from last year. The students that, when we originally thought we were fuller than that, we have students that are at Thomas Paine and Yankee Ridge. And at the beginning of the year, we had some classes that were pretty small at both schools, particularly kindergarten. Thomas Paine was at about 13 in their kindergarten class, and Yankee Ridge was at 11. So we were able to get our kindergarten numbers up from there. Thomas Paine is now at 314, and they are up 12 from last year. Wiley is at 220, down 22 from last year. And Yankee Ridge is at 371, up 28 from last year. So overall, our K through 5 totals are down about 19. Also not included in those counts are Early Childhood Center. If you look at the bottom, right underneath the spreadsheet there, we're at 281 this year. We're up 26 from last year. Moving on to the secondary level, at Urbana Middle School, we're at 973. We're down 21 from last year. And Urbana High School, we're at 1185, down 73. So overall, district total is at 4,175, and we're down 113. Any questions?
Do we know anything about the larger numbers? I mean, middle and high school, of course, are bigger schools, so their numbers are larger, but, you know, after sort of a trend of the numbers being higher than the year before, I mean, that was the case the last, 3 years. Do we know anything about why those numbers are lower this year?
I do not. Talking to the buildings today, we are seeing a little bit of a spike just right after Labor Day, but nothing really significant at this point.
Okay, so you're just saying by the time you have to file this, those numbers may creep up a bit.
They could a bit, yes.
Not that significant.
Not that
I think-
significant, not 113.
I think the high school told us 1192 earlier, Lori, so we saw a few more, but not a significant increase.
I was shuffling my papers when trying to find the sheet, which I found. When you were talking about, in particular, Dr. Williams, and I heard you mention kindergarten, but I lost track of
Oh.
that.
So originally, yes. So with Dr. Williams, kindergarten classes were higher there, and we had 2 other schools, Thomas Paine and Yankee Ridge, that we started off the year that those kindergartens were small.
Okay.
So we were able to fill those schools, the kindergarten, with that overage a bit, because originally they were at 11 and 13, so those kindergarten classes are higher now.
So just to add to that, originally, after centralized registration and after that first week of August, the numbers for Dr. Williams were up in the 460s. And, we tried to keep them around that 450 cap at the very most when we did that redistricting a few years ago. So at that time is when the admin team there reached out to a few families and gave them the opportunity to move to Yankee Ridge or Thomas Paine to get those numbers lower. And
Okay.
then, this is 6-day enrollment. We're not allowed to drop students no-shows until the 10th day. So Kim had been working with the buildings around their no-shows, and we've been, of course, calling families who had not shown up. So after some drops were done, then that brought their numbers down from the 460s to this number that you see today.
Some potential research into the size of the classes at Urbana High School and track if last year's freshman class is current sophomores, and see if last year's freshman class is significantly larger than the current sophomore and on up through. It could be that we had a large, which we did, we had an extraordinarily large number of graduates last year. So it could just be that that's an aspect of the size of the classes, the individual classes going through the school that caused the drop at Urbana High School. But I think probably we would be remiss if we don't recognize the fact that we've got some work to do in this community about showing that Urbana High School is the same as it was before all the issues last year that were in the newspaper that might have encouraged people to leave our schools, and that we're rapidly getting the high school back to where we're concentrating on academics. So I've already heard from lots and lots of parents who are very happy with the directions that are being taken this year, with even some that had some very specific scheduling issues and attempts to maximize AP enrollment and things like that. And um, kudos to the people involved in guidance and in the high school for helping to resolve many of those issues and making it happen so that people could continue to be challenged academically. Anything else? Questions about this report?
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. We have no policy reviews this evening. We do have a public hearing. It's the only time I get to use the gavel, folks. So bang on the gavel, I'm supposed to open the public hearing on the FY20 district budget. If there's anyone here from the public that would wish to talk to us about the budget, now would be the time. Anyone wish to address us regarding the budget this evening? Anyone wish to address us concerning the budget this evening? In 32 years on the board, this is how these public hearings seem to have always gone. Bang it to open it, and bang it shortly thereafter to close it. So I'd like to close the public hearing on the FY20 district budget. Now, we also have a public hearing on the FY20 adult education budget, so banging the gavel again. The public hearing is open. If anyone wishes to address the board regarding the adult education budget, please step forward. If anyone wishes to address the board on the adult education budget, please step forward. Anyone wish to address the board on the adult education budget, please step forward. Common practice is to report that 3 times. I'm not losing my mind.
Good.
Banging the gavel because no one stepped forward. Public hearing is closed. We now move to our action items this evening, and we do have various personnel items before us. So, Angie, are there any ones in particular that we would like to note?
Thanks, sorry, the mic.
You're new, so if you'd like, we have 2 resignations this evening, in particular that we would like to note. One is from Janet Kolchitsky, and the other is from Don Owen. And we would like to thank these individuals, both of whom have been very, very long-term employees. Don, 30 years, and I think Janet's been with us in excess of 20 years at least.
Yes. 25 plus years.
25 years, and so I'd like to thank those individuals for their service to the district. Any
Yes.
others of note?
No, nothing else to note.
Motion to approve the personnel items would be in order.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Carter?
Yes.
Member, Exum?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Pulaski?
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes. Vice President Hall?
Yes.
President Demmett?
Yes, motion carries. We're now ready for our study topics this evening, and the first of these is the aforementioned budget that we just had a public hearing about. So the District 116 budget discussion. Carol?
Good evening. Wanted to, since tonight is the public hearing, I wanted to always give the board a first look at the budget. When we do come back in 2 weeks, you will have the detail that you're happy to go through before the weekend. So you will have a chance to look through this, but as of about 7:25, this is where we stand tonight. So I wanted to go through, if you could, look at the purple one with the purple on it that I left at your place. Looks a little different this year because of a couple strange things we've talked about before that I need to kind of point out, to do some further explanation on specifically the property tax issues that we had. So you're used to seeing this. This is basically a summary of what the revenues and expenses are by fund. What I had to do, though, is because of the property taxes not going into the correct funds, you'll see a second column there where I had to show the transfers that we're going to have to make. So those will be coming to the board later for resolution approval. But as far as the budget, I wanted to make sure that that was included in the budget that way so that we assume those are going to be approved by the board. On the expenditures, we'll go through a little bit in detail when I go through the second sheet. But the other thing on this one pager, because of the taxes being received late, This budget, when you look at that first column, the current year surplus deficit looks really good, because, as you recall, there was a huge amount of tax payments that were supposed to be received normally by June 30th that we didn't get until after July 1. And those amounts are indicated in the FY19 taxes received late, about $8.5 million worth of taxes were received in this year that we normally get in last fiscal year. So I wanted to make sure that we kind of pulled those out so you could see without that happening, this last column is about where we would be. Still better than I thought we were going to look, so it's good news. This also doesn't show the fund balance, beginning fund balance that you're used to seeing. I'll have that on there. Usually when the final budget's presented on the 17th, we'll have, the audit will be further along, and those numbers will be more sure. So we will put those in for the coming board meeting. But also the other thing I wanted to note too is because of all the hospital tax lawsuits that are still pending, because of some recent, the OSF recent ones and Provena ones, we might want to look at setting aside some other dollars that we're getting currently from that just started coming in. So I'm talking with our attorney right now to figure out how much that's going to be and what we might need to recommend setting aside of our fund balance. So again, don't get too excited about these surplus numbers. Some of that may need to be set aside for potential refund if Provena would win or OSF would win, and we would have to repay those taxes. Some of the other things I wanted to point out going down, IMRF, if you recall, that was the one fund that we were not able to transfer, that there's extra taxes going in. About $207,000 of extra property taxes are going into that fund, and we're not able to transfer them out by law. So that's why that fund is a little healthier this year, which is good. And then also the construction fund, working cash bond fund, the $1.1 million deficit. Again, that's money we actually sold those $3 million working cash bonds in 2019. So it looks like a deficit, but that's money we have on hand. So it's spending money that we've actually got in the bank. Otherwise, tort and life safety are the two that are have the biggest deficit right now, other than the working cash. And those are basically just because, as you know, we talked about the forensic attorney that does the recalculation of our state aid. We did go ahead and budget that, assuming the board wanted to go forward with that. So I did budget that in this budget, and that's about $83,000 additional that's going through tort. And then also the life safety, you know, we have the roof work happening at both the middle school and the high school. So that's money that we're spending this year, but it's money that we had on hand. We might go into a little bit of deficit because, as you recall, we actually are doing a little bit more work than what we had intended. But life safety money comes in every year, so that's money that we will recoup. And I did put some of that in working cash as well, some of the excess for the roof work. So if you go to the second, were there any questions on this? Hopefully it makes sense. I know it looks a little different than it has in the past, but in order to explain some of those things that are different this year and probably will be different next year as well, we'll have to have it looking a little different for a couple of years. The next sheet just shows a one-pager of what the major adds and decreases were, just for the education fund. This is the one, our largest fund. This is the one we spend the most time on. Pretty much things that you have seen before. The evidence-based funding, as far as revenues, is only $328,000 this year, so we're not getting a large increase in our tier funding. We're getting some increased special ed reimbursements, replacement tax, interest earnings are up, and not much new otherwise in the revenue side. The expenses, we did a lot of swapping back and forth with the grants. As you know, the title grants, some of those were picking up some things, some new expenses. We've moved those back to the ed fund. They were also able to pick up some costs for the district, so we tried to swap some things, but overall it was some adds to the education fund. Clinical professionals were one of them. We did include, I don't know if Jennifer, you want to say anything about the SRO cost, but we did add SRO costs for the middle school and high school of $275,000. Now that's something we're going to have a presentation on coming up.
Yes,
Yep.
so we will be bringing that group in front of you. I've been working with the chief and the city around our potential SRO costs. As you know, the city has also, we are live now too, John, just so you know. The city council meeting just ended, so welcome everybody to the meeting. So we've been working with the city around their budgetary needs, and they are also doing some cuts. And one of the areas that they need to cut after 26 years of providing the SROs to us at no cost, they are now asking us to share in that cost moving forward. So those have been built into the Ed Fund, and we'll be bringing Chief Serafin and part of his team here for a meeting probably in October at our early study session to talk about that.
Okay, thank you. Were there any other questions? I think most of these other things, the only thing probably to point out, storefront, that decrease is basically, if you recall, we had 2 years and 1 year because we started upfronting them 1 year's worth of storefront costs. We ended up taking that completely out this year because, as we talked about at an earlier meeting, we're going to start supporting the admin salaries for adult ed. So we took out the storefront because it was a very, very involved tuition billing that really didn't make a whole lot of sense to us anymore. And Shauna recommended that we just, instead of doing that, why not just pick up something that's more concrete, that we know going forward what it's going to be. So we agreed to pick up the administrative salaries for adult ed. So you'll see the amount coming out, and it's actually a savings overall. So otherwise, everything looks pretty normal. But that $6.3 million surplus ties to the amount on here before the taxes. So again, that's before those taxes.
So it's important to understand that about almost $6 million of that is
Early, the
needs
taxes
to be
were received
recovered
late.
and put basically to cover shortfalls that occurred last year
Yeah.
due to the late tax billing. So it's I don't want the newspaper article to headline that we're 6.6 million in the black because we're not. It's a timing issue
Yes.
based on the timing of when revenue is occurring.
Yep, thank you. Any questions?
I have a quick one.
Mhm.
The evidence-based funding, tier funding, is any of that money stuff that we were supposed to be getting based on our scorecard from last year? Or when do they even start dealing with that? With getting, and maybe that's not even a question for you, but you know how we had a scorecard last year from the state because of the new funding model, and then schools that needed more resources were going to be promised them. How does that work out with this, and when will we see any of that?
Yeah,
That is
that's
this.
it. I mean,
That
this
is
is what we're
this.
getting. I mean, it's a huge formula that has probably 700 different inputs into it. And this is all we're getting. So unless the state puts more money, appropriates more money towards the evidence-based funding model,
But there's a lot of needs in Tier 1 that.
Tier 1.
That's what I was going to say.
yeah,
We're not a
we're
tier one
2,
school. We're
so-
tier 2. And what they look at is some of our positions. So like one of the things they ask is if you have instructional coaches, which
We do.
we have instructional coaches K-12. So they look at those, there's a really strict, all the additional support staff that we've added have probably played into this too, the clinical professionals, a lot of the other support positions that districts that are tier 1 don't have. So when we enter in that we have a lot of these things, we have social workers at almost every building, and some of those FTE and certified staff that we have that tier 1 schools don't have.
Right, okay.
Impacts our level of what we receive, basically.
Right.
I know I'm kind of
It's very general. but
summarizing that very generally, but.
Otherwise, it would be a 3-hour conversation. But yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I know that's not for now.
It's very
I know
involved.
people ask, what does that mean for us in terms of dollar amounts, and I just wanted to,
Well, tier 2 is better than being tier 3 or 4, but we're
Yep.
still not getting,
yep,
huge amounts at this point.
thank you.
Well, we'll
I-
be back in 2 weeks.
Todd?
I did want to mention, and what I heard in your question too was a little bit about our underperforming and lowest performing schools. So there are some additional dollars coming in this year for the 2 underperforming and 2 lowest performing. And Ms. Norton's working with the principals on that to come up with a plan for those funds.
I guess, yeah, I figured that the timing was too soon, I would imagine, since that scorecard came out. I mean, I don't know what the timing is for you coming up with your budget and how to plan on, you can't really plan on what your scorecard's going to say from year to year,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
how it
this
figures
funding
in.
is all based on enrollment and everything from 18-19 school year.
Right, okay, thank you.
Kim, do you want to say, did you want a little information about the designation? Because we're going to be bringing that later, but Kim has the.
Yeah,
No,
a
I
little
mean-
more information, even if we still will get the same fund, we'll get additional funding, but the same 4 schools will be targeted. And they front-loaded it. So those 4 schools, they're going to get 66% of their money each year.
Okay.
Or this year, they'll get
Mhm.
66% of it. And we do have to get that grant in within
Mhm.
the next couple weeks so that it can be retroactive back to July 1.
Okay, okay.
And if the numbers would change, if we would have a school that their designation would go up, we
Mhm.
still have to be able to support that sustainability, so we will not have to give any money back or anything like that.
Good.
And those plans have to be board approved, so we're going to bring them to you a lot earlier this year. I know last year you weren't looking at those until maybe March or so, something like that, Todd. So Kim's been working with our Empower person, and she's already working with the principals. So we'll bring those plans earlier so they can be spending money throughout the school year instead of, kind of trying to spend it at the end of the year and during the summer. So we need those supports during the year for kids and those interventions and things. So we'll get those on a board meeting as soon as their plans are done. We'll try to do all those presentations here.
And I know, it's not us. I mean, it's a new model. It needs a lot of time to play out, and everybody needs to get their head around the cycle. And I just know that people will probably be asking about that since that, we heard the bad news first last year about how the scores did, and now we're getting the money, and I want people to be able to put the puzzle pieces together, so. Makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, next on our agenda is the adult education budget. Carol or Marcellus?
Okay, good evening. First, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to present the Urbana adult education budget for this school year. I will be referring to a one-page document that I put before you that provides our budget, and it outlines the beginning fund balances, the revenues and expenses, and our projected ending fund balance for the year. We ended FY19 with a little over $1 million in accounts payable in our checking account and approximately $200,000 of outstanding revenue for the year. Therefore, I've estimated our FY20 beginning balance to be $1.2 million. In terms of revenue, we have 15 sources of revenue for the year, and I would like to just highlight a few of those sources. ICCB has awarded us just over $500,000 this year.
For our
which,
viewing audience, explain the acronym.
Illinois Community College Board, absolutely, has awarded us over $500,000 this year, which is actually almost $50,000 more than last year. And it also makes up almost 50% of our total revenue for the year, so they're pretty important. Our Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act grant, which is also referred to as WIOA, and our TAOP grant are comparable to last year's awards, which come in at a little over $158,000 and $159,000 respectively. We do have a new ICCB Innovation Bridge and Transition grant that started in June of 2019 and ends in May 30th of 2020. Though the grant started in June of 2019, it will be paid in FY20 for FY20 expenses, and we are showing it as revenue for this fiscal year. This revenue is not included in our beginning balance, by the way. And finally, we have level funding of $70,000 from United Way Champaign County, which gives us a total revenue of approximately $1,013,000. In terms of expenses, we have 4 categories for expenses for the year, which are salaries, employee benefits, purchase services, and supplies and materials. We have budgeted a little over $713,000 for salaries, $230,000 for employee benefits, $91,000 for purchase services, and a little over $33,000 for supplies and materials. And there is no budget for capital outlay, which brings our total expenses for the year to $1,068,000. Thus, our revenue over expenses for the year is at a deficit of $55,000, which we have a projected ending balance of approximately $1,144,000 for the year. Regarding the deficit, we have added 2 new positions for this year, 1 position in student services, and we've also added a job skills coach. We feel that this investment to our organization will certainly help with student development and transitioning. So my budget is pretty much a fraction of the district budget, so it takes a fraction of the time. But nevertheless, that is the summation of our FY20 budget. Are there any questions?
Questions from the board?
So I guess the $55,000 deficit, it sounds like you expect to be made up for by the 2 new positions?
No, we added 1 new position in student services with salaries and benefits. That almost accounts for the $55,000
Oh, that's
in
why
the
we-
deficit. Plus, in addition to that, we've added a job skills coach. That position is covered probably 80% by our WIOA grant, but there still is a 20% that we're picking up. So the combination of the 2 is much higher than the $55,000 that we're showing as a deficit.
But it sounded like you expected to end the year with a surplus, or at least not with a deficit, or maybe I misunderstood?
No, we plan to end the year with a $55,000 deficit.
Okay. Which I guess you can.
Sure.
Sometimes budgets are conservative on revenue, and you've counted for everything possible under expenses, and maybe your expenses won't quite get to the level of,
Yeah.
and your revenue might be a little bit better than.
Right.
That's how I know Carol budgets, so a lot of times we look like we're in deficit when we're a lot closer to being break even.
Right. Thank you. I was going to reinforce that as well. I also want to say that the way our funding source works for the Illinois Community College Board, we have to, it's based in part on this number of students we serve, as well as our performance and how they pre and post test. And so and it's always from the year before. And so there are some areas of our programming that we need to improve, and so I felt pretty strongly that we needed to invest in those improvements, which hopefully we will then make up for in having increased funding from Illinois Community College Board.
Gotcha.
But it's hard to make those gains without investing in staff to support our students to make those gains. But having said that, we do also, we're still looking for additional funding sources. We've talked about, wanting to work on a partnership with OSF for our CNA program. There's opportunities that we're looking into and trying to develop. So the hope is certainly that we come out much more even. But my reality also is that if we don't for this year, I'm okay with that, because we need to invest in order to gain in the future, if that makes sense, based on how they do our funding.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions for us? Did you have anything to add?
Any other questions from the board?
Can I ask one? I thought one of the
Sure.
board members might ask. What is the innovation grant? What is that for?
So we applied for a CNA, the Illinois Community College Board offered programs the opportunity to apply for grants focused on employment and transition services. And we chose to write one for our CNA program because our funding with Carl had ended. And so we developed a new program, which also Marcellus didn't mention this, but the other position that we increased was, instead of having a part-time and just a few hours a week ESL coordinator, we went to a full-time instructor and coordinator position, which has already has already been benefiting us programmatically, and there's an opportunity to apply for an ICCB ESL grant. But again, we have to have our programming where it needs to be in order to qualify for that grant. And I think that grant is, when is that grant cycle up? Is it at the end of this year? So, but, sorry, Jennifer, to your question, the CNA program, we're doing both. We increased our CNA programming, but we also created a bridge program for students who academically aren't quite ready for CNA, or maybe they have some English language learning needs. And so it's co-taught by the CNA instructor and an ESL teacher.
Oh, wow.
And it's a semester-long course, and we're offering it all year, both semesters. And then if those students do well and make gains in the pre-CNA course, they qualify for our CNA course.
Good, awesome, thank you.
In terms of the timeline, it actually ends in May. So it started as of June of this year. We didn't have any expenses towards that particular grant for the last month of the fiscal year. So nevertheless, most of the expenses for the new grant will be in FY20, will be expensed in FY20.
Okay, other questions? Board? Thank you.
Thank you.
And as soon as I find my agenda, okay. We have no, yes, we do have a call for a future special executive meeting. Lori, help me with the date. September 16th. So, and that's for personnel issues. Any other special meetings or executive meetings we need to highlight? All right. Superintendent's report.
Okay, I promised a shorter one, so this one is much shorter today. So, and welcome everybody. This is our first meeting with all 7 of you. So yay, we're very excited to have you all here tonight. So if I hope you were watching or on, I know some of you are on the social media, and I've been kind of putting myself out there on social media, and so my first blog post was up on Friday. So if you've not had an opportunity to look at that, I'd encourage you to go. We have several links of a lot of stories and activities. We gave a little shout out there to Tim Cook and Sandy Davin, our most senior 35-year veteran teachers there. So I'm in a photo there with them. So those will be available at the end of every month. So I'll do highlights very similar to what you saw for the August post. I know these are on the back of the agenda, but I did just want to highlight them for the viewing public. UHS Open House is tomorrow, September 4th, from 6 to 7. And then next week, UMS Open House / Curriculum Night, September 12th, from 6 to 7. And then there's some other activities and events highlighted in the blog there. You can go to there to see those. We have a couple of celebrations. So one, we had a birthday yesterday that we wanted to recognize. Yesterday was Lori's birthday. So yay. Happy birthday, Lori.
Happy birthday
To you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lori. Happy birthday to you. Yay. So we appreciate you, Lori, for all you do to kind of keep us together and keep us moving in the right direction. So thank you. And happy belated birthday. It was yesterday. And another celebration, you guys don't know this, but I've had so many people ask me about the magnets. Woohoo! Gosh, I probably had like 50 people stop me at registration and say, where are the magnets? So they were a little delayed. We were making sure that we had them translated in Spanish and French. So the magnets are available just in time for UHS Open House. So all of you parents who have been asking me, go to Open House because your magnets will be there tomorrow night. All of the other schools will have magnets as of Friday. So, yay. The magnets are back. We're super excited about that, as you can tell. I do have a couple of board recognitions that we just found out about today, actually. So 3 of our master board members have been recognized and moved a level in their master board member program. And this is done through meetings and conferences, some of those summits that you hear our board members kind of update you on when they do their board reports. So just to recognize and celebrate Ruth Ann Fisher, Master Board Member, has moved to level 2. Congratulations, Ruth Ann. Ann Hall, Master Board Member, level 2. Yay. And Paul Pulowski, Master Board Member, level 1. Yes. So just the way this works with the Illinois Association of School Boards, you reach the designation of Master Board Member, and then you move levels as you attend more IESB events. So congratulations, and thank you for giving your time and going to those events to represent Urbana School District. That's it for...
Okay. Board reports.
I did attend, along with Jennifer and who else was there at Wiley? And Tori was there, and some other people from Wiley for the open house. They finished the outdoor garden/classroom area that they've been working really hard on all summer, and they had a really fun open house. Dr. Heinhorst came dressed as what was she dressed as? A beekeeper, and Jill Quisenberry was our bumblebee, and it was just really fun. And they had a scavenger hunt and all sorts of things for the kiddos to come back to. But I remember going there last year and seeing what a swamp it was for a long time, and it's beautiful, and they have lots of plans for it already. So that was really fun.
Ruth Ann? Oh,
yeah,
yes.
we did a moment of silence last time, for that.
Okay. Open house for Ron is September 6th, I believe. Yes, in the evening, at the Urbana Country Club. So, any other board reports this evening? Motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second.
Moved in second, but everybody's excited about putting that motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.